Welcome to Urgine International Internal Auditor course for the requirements for quality and competence for medical laboratories based on ISO 15189, 2022. Structural and governance requirements. Legal responsibility. The laboratory, or the organization of which it is a part, shall be a legal entity that can be held legally responsible for its activities. Note: for the purposes of this document, a government laboratory is considered a legal entity on the basis of its government status. Laboratory Director. The laboratory must be led by a director, or by designated individuals, who have the right qualifications, proven competence, and the necessary authority, responsibility, and resources to ensure that all the requirements of this standard are properly met. The laboratory director carries the responsibility of making sure the management system is fully implemented. This includes applying risk management across all areas of the laboratory's work, so that any risks to patient care are identified and addressed, and opportunities for improvement are acted upon. All the director's duties and responsibilities must be clearly documented. The laboratory director may delegate certain duties or responsibilities to qualified and competent staff, but every delegation must be clearly documented. However, even when tasks are delegated, the director still holds ultimate responsibility for the overall operation of the laboratory. Laboratory activities. The laboratory needs to clearly specify and document the range of activities it carries out, including those performed outside the main location, such as point-of-care testing or sample collection. It can only claim compliance with this standard for the activities it directly performs, and this does not extend to laboratory services that are continuously provided by external parties. All laboratory activities must be carried out in a way that meets the requirements of this standard, as well as the needs of users, regulatory authorities, and any organizations that provide recognition. This applies to the full range of documented laboratory services, no matter where they are performed. Laboratory management must make sure that proper advice and interpretation are always available, and that they meet the needs of both patients and users. This means setting up clear arrangements so the lab can communicate with users, especially when it comes to advising on which examinations to choose, what type of sample is required, the clinical indications and limitations of different methods, and even how often those examinations should be requested. In addition to guiding users on choosing the right examinations, the laboratory also plays a key role in interpreting results. This means providing professional judgments to help with understanding the findings. The lab should also promote the effective use of examinations, making sure they're not just ordered, but ordered and used in the right way. And finally, the lab should give advice on scientific and logistical matters, such as when a sample doesn't meet the required acceptability criteria, so users know how to proceed. Structure and authority. The laboratory must have a well-defined organizational and management structure. This includes its role within any parent organization, as well as how management, technical operations, and support services are connected. It should clearly specify the responsibilities, authority, communication lines, and interrelationships of all personnel involved in managing, performing, or verifying work that affects laboratory results. In addition, the laboratory must establish procedures, at the necessary level of detail, to ensure that its activities are applied consistently and that the results it produces remain valid. The laboratory must have designated personnel who are responsible for quality management. These individuals, regardless of any other roles they may hold, need to have both the authority and the resources to carry out their duties effectively. Their responsibilities include making sure the management system is properly implemented, maintained, and continuously improved. They are also responsible for identifying any deviations from the management system or laboratory procedures, and for taking or initiating actions to prevent or minimize such issues. In addition, they must report to laboratory management on how the management system is performing, highlight any areas where improvements are needed, and ensure that all laboratory activities remain effective. It's worth noting that these responsibilities don't necessarily have to fall on one person, they can be assigned to more than one qualified individual. Laboratory management has the responsibility to set clear objectives and policies, and to keep them up to date. These objectives should focus on a few key things. First, they need to meet the needs and expectations of patients and laboratory users. Second, they must reflect a strong commitment to good professional practice. Third, they should ensure that all examinations provided by the lab truly serve their intended purpose. And finally, they must make sure that everything the lab does is in line with the requirements of this standard. Next, the laboratory's objectives need to be measurable and aligned with the overall policies. It's not enough to just set them on paper, management has to make sure these objectives and policies are actually applied across every level of the organization. Also, whenever there are planned changes to the management system, the lab must ensure that the integrity of the system is maintained throughout the process. In other words, no matter what changes are made, the system should continue to function effectively and consistently. The laboratory also needs to set up quality indicators to measure how well it's performing across all stages, from pre-examination, through the examination itself, and even after results are reported. These indicators should be tied to the lab's objectives, so performance can be tracked and improved where necessary. For example, quality indicators could include things like how many samples are rejected compared to the total received, how many errors happened during registration or sample receipt, how many reports had to be corrected, or whether the lab is meeting its turnaround time targets. Risk management is a key part of the laboratory's responsibility. The laboratory management must set up and maintain processes to identify any risks that could cause harm to patients, as well as opportunities to improve patient care linked to examinations and other activities. Once those risks and opportunities are identified, the lab needs to plan and implement actions to address them. The laboratory director is responsible for making sure these processes are not just in place, but also regularly checked for how effective they are, and updated if they are found to be ineffective. For further guidance, ISO 22367 explains risk management in medical laboratories, while ISO 35001 provides more details on biorisk management for labs.